Many years later, I've been blown up, flown to London, I've recovered, I'm out of hospital, I'm in the sun for the first time, and I'm wearing, you know, London even in June can be quite cold, a heavy top, and my brother and his companion move off, and I'm sitting alone in the Rose Garden in a beautiful park in central London, enjoying the sun and the quiet, and I'm getting hot, hot, hot. Should I take off my top? Yes, I'm hot. No, I can't. I'm ugly. I've got a short arm. I've got scars. People are coming to look at roses. They don't want to see an amputated person. Come on, Albie. You're getting hot. Yes, no, yes, no. And I use my mouth and I pull off the sleeve and I put it over my head and I'm feeling the sun on my skin and it's beautiful. And people are just walking by. Nobody cared tuppence. If I don't feel ugly, people don't look at me as ugly. I feel so proud that I've taken that decision, and the romantic that I am. When I wrote about it, I said, and taking that decision surrounded by roses. Now I've got, in some ways, an even bigger dare. Should I or shouldn't I? What would you say, not even knowing what it is?
Yes. I wish we could provide the roses.
I dreamt I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. Then I move on, and standing there as large as life, a smile upon his eyes, says Joe, what they forgot to kill went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine or mill, where working men defend their rights, 'tis there you'll find Joe Hill. 'Tis there you'll find Joe Hill. I dreamt I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. Phew. So I'm in Cape Town, and I think I'm going to really give them a surprise. You know, these people talking about ideas and concepts and so on, and they think I'm a serious guy and I'm going to sing. And it's easy peasy until Susan puts on that amazing show, and it's the real Paul Robeson singing with the real voice. It's one thing in Cape Town imagining a seminar in Potsdam. It's quite another singing after Paul Robeson himself. Then when the choir sang, I thought, well, okay, the bar's a little bit lower. And then last night, this beautiful soprano singing. So I needed your help. And this is one of 5 Robeson songs that have entered into my life and become part of the story that I'm telling. And I learned that I'd just become politically active, age 17, second-year law student. I'd actually gone to a lecture by a South African poet called Eiskrieger on a Spanish poet called Federico Lorca. I didn't even know they had poets in Spain, but my mom said, go, you'll enjoy it. And Eiskrieger, an Afrikaner, had been to Spain towards the end of the Civil War, And now he spoke about this man, and he spoke for like 3 hours non-stop, walking up and down on the stage, quoting the Pablo Neruda poem about the death of Lorca a las 5 de la tarde, at 5 in the afternoon, at 5 in the afternoon, at 5 in the afternoon, when he was assassinated. And that event did something enormous for me, because I'd been born into a very political family. I had wanted, in a way, to get away from all that. All my way through first-year university, I didn't even know who to vote for in elections. I was a keen mountain climber. I played some cricket, and I read poetry. And I loved reading poetry. That inward, soulful, imaginary, dreaming self meant a lot to me. And what the lecture on Lorca did was it connected up that inward longing for something special in life, something beyond, something that takes you to beyond, with the public events of the world. And a few weeks later, I was in the Defiance of Unjust Laws campaign. So how did I learn Joe Hill? I joined the Modern Youth Society. In those days, Suppression of Communism Act, Communist Party is banned. You can't even talk about socialism. Communism is defined very widely to include any protests, unlawful protests against the existing regime in South Africa. So we have something called the Modern Youth Society. Modernism today is getting quite a bad name at being rigid and unrelated to the passions and the moods and the accents and so on of the world. But I still belong to the modernist movement. I was lifted up by Picasso and the modernism in architecture and all the rest. But we were modernists in South Africa, and we were fighting for change in South Africa. And it was a small organization, 20, 30, big meeting, 40 people, mostly white. We couldn't join the ANC. The ANC was for black African people only. And we had people not white who joined our ranks, but mostly white, hating apartheid and defying the color bar in all sorts of ways in our own little kind of space. And we loved to feel we were part of an international movement fighting against imperialism, fighting against colonialism, fighting against racism. And we particularly enjoyed the music we got from the US of A. We had a set of records from the International Brigade, and it's interesting, I don't remember them now. I know one was called Hans Beimler Kommissar, very, very, very beautiful piece, but I don't remember it. I remember the Pete Seeger, my daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son. I'm sticking to the Union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Yeah. And it had a kind of a rousing, easygoing things. And here were, women called Rebecca, Becky, and Shulamit, and Sachs and Ritzstein and so on. My daddy was a miner. None of our dads had been miners anywhere close to mine. My daddy, in fact, was a trade union leader of the Garment Workers Union. And the music we loved the most was Paul Robeson. That just reached us. We didn't theorize it. We didn't speak about an Africanity and so on. It just reached us. And he was a beautiful figure for us. I wouldn't say a powerful figure, a beautiful figure, a resonant figure, an admirable figure. We loved the fact that this guy in the struggle played football. Why? Because somehow the struggle is seen for nerds who are not very good at anything, and to give meaning to life, they join the struggle. And here's this guy who's a great football player. We loved the fact that he was an actor. And, nogal as we say, on top of it, Shakespeare, Othello, and taking this tragic figure and just giving it a bravura that audiences were going into rapture, lifting that out of Shakespeare in a way, transcending Shakespeare. And we loved the fact that we could listen to his music and hear it and enjoy it and join in. I'm very slow at picking up. You know, some people hear something once and they remember. It's now, I'm speaking about now 1953, so it's 54, 53. How many years? 70 years. It's stuck. You know, I don't have to go to Google to get the words. And I find in different times in my life, in different ways, Robeson's music cropped up. So you're going to get, you've heard one, and there are another four, two of which were sung last night, to my chagrin, the one you've just heard. And there's one extra now, so it's 4 plus 1 in my presentation. The plus 1 is round about late 1950s, a Welsh-born pianist who'd been to the United States called Harold Rubens came to the College of Music at the University of Cape Town, and people said, Harold Rubens played with Paul Robeson at Peekskill. I hope it's true. I looked up Peekskill. I saw there were many Peekskill concerts, so maybe there wasn't just one accompanist. So independently of how brilliant he was with Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto, he played at Peekskill. That meant you had to listen to him. And we knew he was kind of progressive, and his wife, Lisa, a painter, artist, also progressive. At the time of the shooting at massacred Sharpeville, 1960, when 69 people were shot dead, he put on a special performance at the University of Cape Town of classical music, funeral music. It is marvelous that he did it, but it didn't capture us. You know, it's a performance up there in honor, and it's solemn. It wasn't kind of moving. But he gave our struggle help in another way. A state of emergency was declared. Lots of our leaders were locked up. I wasn't enough of a leader to be locked up, so I'm now carrying on with underground work, with most of our leaders locked up in prison. And one of our leaders had hidden, and he was hiding in the house of Harold Rubens. And I would go there, park my car around the corner somewhere, sneak in. And what gave me a special kind of thrill was Fred Connerson was his name. We and I discussing how can we get contact with the comrades in Johannesburg, this, that, and the other. And Harold is practicing for the Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto. So two loves in my life, revolution and Beethoven coming together. But also that feeling is if the police have got bugs listening to us, all they'll get is the rehearsal of the first movement of the Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto. Time passes. I'm a lawyer, attorney, you'd say in America, barrister in England, advocate in South Africa, thrown into solitary confinement. And I, totally alone, the door slams, da-da-da-da. I'm using Beethoven to get me courage, da-da-da-da. And it was horrible. You read books, you know you're going to go to jail, you're in the struggle, that's part of the project. So this is what it's like. And just sheer isolation. They're not kicking me, they're not hitting me, I'm just alone. No one to speak to, nothing to do, nothing to do, nothing to do. You stare at your toes, the wall, your toes, your wall, the toes, the wall. You don't know how long it's going to be, and it's only 3 minutes have passed. So I started activities. I would go through all the states of the United States of America. I didn't know if there were 48 or 50. I knew there were 2 were added in my lifetime, Alaska and Hawaii. And I think I once got up to 47. I couldn't write down the names. And then I would go through the alphabet with songs. always, because Charmaine, Daisy, I cheated a bit with Deep in the Heart of Texas, just to hear my voice. It's nothing to do with Robeson, but I'm going to throw it in anyhow. My favorite was Always. I'll be living here, always, year after year, always, in this little cell that I know so well. I'll be living swell, always, always, and feeling amused that this song by Irving Berlin, a tribute to his wife of 70 years, picked up by Noel Coward in a comedy of Manners West End show, is keeping the spirit of the revolutionary alive. And I twirl around some more. I'll be staying in always, keeping up my chin always, not for but a week, not for but a month, not for 90 days, but always. It was called the 90-day law. And the sounds in prison are people screaming, doors thudding, everything is metal, harsh, ugly, drunk people battering, screaming, tattoo, and then quiet again, and then comes up again. And suddenly I hear whistling. Oh, somebody's whistling. And I whistle back, and I'll sing it now. My boye, my boye, my boye, Africa, come back Africa. There's no response. Senzenina, 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 what have we done, what have we done? It's still sung today in South Africa. No response. The people's flag is deepest red, it shrouded oft our martyr dead, and ere their limbs grew stiff and cold, their hot blood dyed its every fold. Then raise the scarlet stand. No response. So it's not one of us. And then I hear, la la la, la la la, la 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 la. La 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 la. It's whistling. La 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 la. And then I whistle back. La 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 la. La 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 la. And even the theme going home, you know, you're locked up, and I knew there's some other political prisoner, I never knew who it was, is coming back to me. And I'd actually forgotten until a little while ago that the Robeson Going Home theme, I'd heard him singing it. And I loved the Dvorak, and when I was offered a chance to appear on Desert Island Discs, a program of radio that everybody wants to get on in London, I put the Dvorak slow movement of Ninth Symphony on as one of my favorite pieces. Some more time passes. I'm in Mozambique. I'm helping to develop the new legal system there. It's April the 7th, the Day of the Mozambican Woman, a public holiday, and I'm going to the beach, and pow! Something terrible's happening. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm in total darkness, and I hear a voice saying, Albie, this is Eva Garrido speaking. You're in Maputo Central Hospital. You must face the future with courage. Your arm is in a lamentable condition. And I said, what happened? And a woman's voice said, it's a car bomb. I fainted, but I fainted into joy. I knew I was safe. I knew I wasn't being kidnapped to be thrown into prison in South Africa. And some time passes. I feel I'm lying on my back, very light and very positive. And I tell myself a joke, a Jewish joke. I'm a Jew, it's like Amy Cohen falls off a bus, and he makes this sign, and somebody said, "Hi, me, I didn't, you know the joke?" Yeah. I didn't know you were Catholic. What do you mean Catholic? Spectacles, testicles, wallet and watch. I think I can claim I'm the only person who's told that joke after being blown up. And for some reason I started with testicles. I've tried all my life without success to be macho, but I had my 15 minutes of fame because my friend heard the story, and the story went round the ANC camps, and the first thing Comrade Albie did was reach for his balls. Seemed to be in order. Wallet, my heart okay, my head seems to be okay. I've lost an arm. I've only lost an arm. And some people say that's the sign of an optimist. I've only lost an arm. But that's exactly how I felt. And I had a total, utter conviction that I would survive, and as I got better, my country would get better. And 2 years later, I was back in South Africa. Meanwhile, the Mozambican doctors saved my life. Sadly, they had a lot of experience in dealing with trauma. And they did everything. The London doctors were amazed. So short of everything. The bandages would be taken off, boiled and used again. The needles I'd be injected with be sterilized and used again. But they had professionalism, they had love, they had care. And I'm flown to London, and I'm feeling pretty chipper and buoyant. And I'm going to get better, my country's going to get better, and I'm learning to sit, and I'm learning to shit. And I wrote it in the book, I shit, therefore I am. It's all these signs of recovery, and I can stand, and I'm feeling pretty bright. But I discover sometimes I wake up 4 in the morning, it's dark, there's nobody around. I'm actually feeling a little bit sorry for myself. And I would sing to myself what I called to myself a Negro spiritual. It's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's not my brother nor my sister, but it's me, O Lord. Now, I grew up in the most secular family you could ever imagine. And yet, at that moment, when I'm completely alone and not in public and I wanted consolation, I'm singing to myself a religious song, Paul Robeson, and I felt a comfort and warmth from that, not through the spirituality, but through his voice. And then I'd say, it's not my brother nor my sister, but it's me, O Lord. It's not my uncle nor my auntie, but it's me, O Lord. And then I fall asleep, and then I'd wake up and be cheerful again. And then one day, I get a letter, you remember those things? With stamps and envelopes that you licked. And I open it, and it says, don't worry, Comrade Albie, we will avenge you. Avenge me? Cut off the arm, blind in one eye? Is that the country we want? But if we get freedom, if we get democracy, if we get rights for everybody, that will be my soft vengeance. And the theme of soft vengeance became the theme of my life. Going back, helping to write the Constitution, voting as an equal for the first time, being on the Constitutional Court, defending the values we'd been fighting for, and filling the court with courtroom with beautiful art, representing the different imaginations and hopes and aspirations of the people, all part of soft vengeance. And I mention that because I find it very congruent with the spirit of Robeson. The next occasion, very direct memory from Robeson. The Chinese Supreme Court, the Supreme Court of the People's Republic of China, are visiting our beautiful new building on the site of the old Fort Prison, where, by the way, we sometimes brag. We have the only prison in the world where both Gandhi and Mandela were locked up. And just by the way, I'm part of that generation And we know that Gandhi said racist things at different times of his life, but he was a South African freedom fighter, and he inspired our people, and he showed an empathy and a connection with black people in struggle that was very, very intense, and became foundational in a way when the Natal Indian Congress and the ANC got together. Foundation of non-racism in South Africa was Indian-African cooperation before whites got involved. So I'm now, having been appointed with my colleague Yvonne Mokgoro, when everybody was given functions, the library, the rules of court, this thing called computers. Kate, will you tell us what they are? Toli Madala, will you do the gown? Albie and Yvonne, will you look after decor? And he has 10,000 Rand, it was $2,000 then. And I show people, see what you can do if you're mad, and the arts community are mad, and your colleagues are willing enough to go along with your madness, you can do absolute wonders. And we built that amazing court, wonderful building on the site of that horrible prison to show the juxtaposition. You're not stuck in the past. You take the negative energy and you turn it into positive energy. You don't try and bury it. Any event, part of decor became visitors committee. And we told that the members of the Chinese Supreme Court are coming to our court. Albie and Yvonne, will you organize? So we arrange the table, how many there are, and about 7, 8, 9 men looking very serious, dark suits, dark ties, come in, very, very unsmiling, and they're sitting on their side of the table, and we're sitting on our side. It's a big, beautiful round table, and arise, you refuse to be bond slaves. Let's stand up and fight for liberty and true democracy. All of us are breaking the chains of the tyrants. Everyone who stands for freedom is now crying. Chilai, Chilai, Chilai. All of us with one heart, with the torch of freedom, march on, march on, march on and on. So the judges there are sitting. My colleagues are saying, what's happened to Albie? You know? And then the judges, and the one starts smiling and the other smiles, and they burst into huge smiles. They can't believe it's the Chinese national anthem. Unfortunately, it's not saying anything about Mao Zedong and people's power or anything that could be awkward in terms of our very open society constitution. Several years later, Vanessa and I are in Beijing. I'm teaching at the Tsinghua University. I think they call it their #1 university. And I'm invited to make a presentation at the law school. And I start off, before anything else, I just sing. And the same kind of process. And I have an affection for China in the sense of, for all of us, we had our revolution. My parents had the Russian Revolution. I had the Chinese Revolution. Another generation had the Cuban Revolution. Another generation would have been Mozambique, Angola, people power. And you get to know the culture and, so I'm not singing Kalinka. We didn't learn any Chinese songs. The people from Havana, I think, got the best bet in terms of the culture they picked up. Guantanamera is much more fun than Kalinka. And I do the same thing. And they published my book in Mandarin, Strange Alchemy of Life and Law. And it speaks about society, the rule of law, and decisions we gave against the government. I don't think I would literally single-handedly transform the nature of the judicial political system in China. It is just a small thing. But I also love the idea that it's an internationalism of Paul Robeson playing itself out in that way. when I think back of that little group in Cape Town, here it is, these mainly white people, many of Jewish background, singing a song by a black American, paying a tribute to a white American. You can't get, in some ways, more universal than that. And that theme of universality comes through. And I think it was a rooted universality. The rootedness was important. And the person when I try and describe him to South Africans today, I said he was the Mandela of my generation. With that sense of, we didn't use the word charisma then, it's before Max Weber's time, he just seemed to reach out to everybody. He seemed to embrace everybody. He seemed to give courage to everybody in a way that was uplifting, that was not rousing to get your heart beating faster. It was like resonant and steady, that voice, a very human voice, not a machine-made voice, and the associations and the feel was something that seemed so positive. And we would hear stories about upper-class people in Britain adored him, they invited him, they wanted him to come there. There were stories about Lord Mountbatten and Lady Mountbatten and so on. Somehow the red fear, the bitterness of the assault on him in the United States there's no lack of anti-communists in London. It's loaded with anti-communists, but it didn't take on that snarling, bitter, spiteful character that the persecution took on. In fact, he was welcomed, he was enjoyed. And they might say, he's a little bit wacky, maybe a bit condescending about his pro-Soviet views and so on, but they loved him as a person. They loved what he represented. They loved the fact that he could go down to Rwanda and speak to people in Wales and get that marvelous respect. And we in South Africa absolutely adored him. There was one guy, Barney Dessa, I remember, who happened to be in Glasgow when Robeson was on the platform. And he came back and he said, and I was at that meeting, and he said, and Robeson sang and I talked. And we all burst out laughing. You couldn't understand why we were laughing. That I spoke, he said. So he was a very, very important figure for us. And I was a little bit nervous coming here. Nervous in the sense that I might go away feeling I loved him so much. I remember a couple of years back, I told Vanessa and our son, Oliver, you've got to see the film Some Like It Hot. I saw it 5 times. I laughed so much. And we put it on. I didn't even smile. I thought, is Robeson going to turn out to be, well, maybe. But I'm happy to say I feel reinvigorated, reconnected, not just remembering our idealism, and it was a naive idealism, and I like naivety. The world needs naivety. There's a freshness to it. You get hurt when you're naive. You get disappointed. But we need it. We need to avoid that kind of cynicism that denies the possibilities of goodness in everybody, of advance in societies. We need to feel open to the connections that can be made across the divides that keep us so much apart. And that I felt so strongly from Paul Robeson. Let me conclude with a few more generalized comments why I feel my affection, it's not only an affection for him, it's an affection for the young idealistic Albie. We've suffered a lot of shocks. I couldn't wait for that statement by Robeson on Stalin's, after his death, to be taken down. It seemed to be up there forever, forever, take it down. And I could see in it, it was his maybe sycophantic way of putting the emphasis on peace, peaceful coexistence. But it was a horrible reminder that this person whom I had admired and loved was a monster. There's no other word about it. He did horrible things, not just to peoples and so on, but to his own comrades. It was murderous, and we defended. So I've learned you don't defend the indefensible because you like the project. If there's something wrong in the project, you can still like it, but you don't defend the indefensible aspects. I'd like to pass on something that fits in very well with what I heard about universalism. It's two interconnected themes. The one is the difference between globalization and universalism. They're actually opposites. Globalization starts from somewhere and encompasses the whole globe. Universalism is discovering things everywhere on Earth that resonate with each other. It's the total opposite. Now, we live in a world of combination of the two. I'm speaking on a microphone. I've flown here in a plane. Globalization has enabled me to be here. But it's that universalism of, I think, Robeson represented it more than anybody I've ever heard of. It's not just the number of languages. And I think it's partly, we were very strong on solidarity, international solidarity, and I still like international solidarity. But that's at the level of abstractions and fights. Universalism is much deeper, it's more profound, it comes from inside. And when he says, I want to sing the folk music of the people rather than the reasoned, because it comes from inside, I felt that gave me a little more courage to sing rather than compete with some of the very brilliant dialectic that we've heard here. The other is interrelated, is a discovery I made when dealing with writing a preface to the Chief Justice of Kenya, William Matunga. Brilliant guy in struggle. When he writes to me on Chief Justice notepaper, "Dear Comrade Albie," I don't respond in that way because we have to be careful in South Africa with being typecast and so on and so forth. He's got a brilliant legal mind. He was thrown into prison under the one-party state regime. He fought for his independence, and he was chosen by Parliament to be the Chief Justice. And the two things nearly stopped him from being appointed. One was he'd never been a judge before, and he was opposed by somebody who'd been a judge for a long time. So corrupt, never having been a judge was in his favor. The other was he had a little ear stud, and he was questioned by members of Parliament about that. And he said, "You think maybe that I'm homosexual. That's why you're asking me about this. In fact, I'm not, but my firm has defended homosexual people and the right of homosexual people to organize and claim their rights. But this is part of my culture, something I got from my uncle as a child growing up, and he said this will give me spiritual strength." Now, I'm disturbed by this. This is Comrade Willie, scientific socialist. And he's got a little, like an amulet in his ear, and he's willing to sacrifice getting onto the bench. And I developed this notion, which I add to the discussion, of the distinction between what I call cold knowledge and warm knowledge. And cold knowledge is scientific, it's replicable, it's independent of the communicators. It's fantastically powerful. It enables us billionaires to fly to the moon and beyond. It can be destructive, it can heal, it's very, very important. Warm knowledge is knowledge communicated in other ways through ritual, chant, religion, services of different kinds. It's enormously meaningful to people. I would have discarded warm knowledge as superstition, backwardness to be combated. And now I just feel in our country it's so important for so many people that it's got to be part and parcel of the transmission of ideas and themes and so on from generation to generation. That's hugely meaningful to millions of people in their ordinary lives. And I sense there's something in Robeson, his way of communicating. It's through that resonance of the voice, it's through the warmth of it, it's through the spiritual language, it's through the connections with suffering in the past, but endurance against suffering. It's not just the idea, the knowledge, the theme. It's the manner of the communication that's extremely important. The other thoughts that come to me recently is the importance to distinguishing between anger and rage. Anger is potentially a very powerful, helpful, productive source of energy and enterprise. You don't put up with rubbishy things, with harmful things, with noxious things. You respond to it. Rage is where the anger becomes so explosive that the only way you can deal with rage is to exterminate the source of the rage. It's, in fact, not dealing with it. It eats you up, but it also means there's no coexistence between you and the source of the rage. And I see that non-distinction playing itself out in many very big events in the world today. And if one can pull back from rage to anger, then there are possibilities of dialogue that otherwise wouldn't exist. So just thank you, both of you, for the occasion. Thank you for helping me retain naivety, which is very, very precious. Thank you for enabling us to meet such wonderful people and such diverse people. And thank you for joining two of my heroes, Albert Einstein. Not that I can follow his theories.
Almost no one can.
Yeah, right. But, you know, I'll just end with this when I've mentioned once my Jewishness in the joke. But what connects me, if you like, with 3,000 years of Jewish history is Karl Marx, who wanted to revolutionize the world, Albert Einstein, who wanted to revolutionize the heavens, and Sigmund Freud, who wanted to revolutionize our inner selves. So you brought two of them together. Maybe we'll have a conference on the third, all three, one day. Thank you.
Well, you're the one who has our thanks, and I now know why so many different people in different countries. You have to meet Albie Sachs. I get it. Thank you so much. Albie said he will answer a few questions if anybody... I mean, it's a very hard act to follow with a question, but...
If I may, hi. So Albie, in the previous session there was discussion about the term victim, and it occurred to me that when people ask you, not that I want to compare you with Mr. Paul Robeson, but when people ask you about having made a sacrifice and having lost your arm and how that affects, you know, they usually said in the context of what's going on in the country, you've made so much sacrifices, is this the country you are fighting for? And I just wondered if you could reflect on that, not for too long, but just for a minute. It might give some resonance to that question of victimhood.
You know, I understood completely when I heard that Paul Robeson didn't feel victimized. Am I right? Yeah. There's something very powerful about being a volunteer in the freedom struggle. It just gives a lift to your life and very, very great meaning. And you know it, there are risks involved. That's part of the project. So you don't complain. You've joined the struggle. You know that's what's going to happen. You feel fantastic. I've survived. I've got through. It's amazing. You know, that's marvelous. But that's like the bonus. And the joy of it is actually, you know, I sometimes say I am, this is a huge claim to make, the most privileged human being on earth. I have the privilege that was put onto me through my white skin in South Africa. That's huge. You can imagine anything. You can go anywhere. You could do anything. Fly to the moon, discover bacteria smaller than Pasteur discovered, sail around the earth. You can imagine all that with your white skin. But I had the privilege of being part of a liberation movement, being received into it, and received with so much affection and you know, so lovingly by so many people, different ages and backgrounds and so on. That sense of comradeship is something very, very, very special and very transcendent. So then, on top of all that, to see we get a constitution, we get a court, you know, okay, the ugly things happened along the way. Things I defended were indefensible. And I've got to change my mindset quite a lot. And as it happened, it was actually my experience in Mozambique, not Stalin and Stalinism. That was horrible to learn about and to digest. And maybe learning about it not through the Khrushchev report only, but through reading Solzhenitsyn and Pasternak and the others, and feeling it all, it just kind of made a whole lot of sense. But in Mozambique, when we arrived there, people's powers seemed to work. The one-party state seemed to work. It united everybody in a marvelous way. We sang the songs. We had people from all over the world, refugees from Pinochet in Chile and from Brazil, and May Day marches. That sense of international solidarity was very powerful. We loved queuing up for bread. You know, middle-class people love joining the workers. I'm sorry, I'm saying this against ourselves, queuing up for bread. And the energy was so positive, and the artwork, the painting, the murals, the sculptures, the emphasis on every unit in society, every school, every hospital, clinic had its cultural group. Singing was important, dance was important, painting was important. All of that just, I felt, wow, it works. After all, it works. And then the Civil War started, and things just began to deteriorate. I lost an arm. So many Mozambicans lost legs through landmines. They had child soldiers from Renamo. Millions, literally millions of refugees leaving the country internal. It destroyed the economy, and it wiped out the idealism in Mozambique. So it became very clear to me, not because I read about the open society and its enemies, because of what we experienced in Mozambique. You just have to have space for alternative positions. If you don't, the opposition doesn't disappear. It goes underground, it gets picked up internationally, you have civil war. So I became converted to the open society, living in Mozambique, loving Mozambique. People saved my life. Mozambican walking by died as a result of the shrapnel of my Honda that killed him. So I have an identification with that country that's very, very powerful. But the one-party state, to my mind, didn't work, and we needed contestation, and we just had to be better. than the other side, and have better policies and more attractive policies, and really respond to the needs of people in ways to win, and not simply because we had a monopoly of power. Okay, so that's...
If I can
don't give short answers, Vanessa.
If I can just riff a bit on the beginning of Albie's answer, because it reminded me very much of something said by good friend, longtime chair of our advisory board, David Schulman, who is an American who moved to Israel when he was 18, and since the second Intifada, most of his life, and he's a very highly decorated multilingual professor, most of his life has consisted of going out with a group called Ta'ayush. He co-founded, it means living together in Arabic, and they go out to protect Palestinians from attacks by the settlers. David has been beat up and jailed many times. In fact, one time when I went out with him, I said, "What do I bring?" He said, "Well, bring a book in case we get arrested. It's quite boring in jail." But of course, Israelis get out much easier than Palestinians do, which is why this small group of Israelis goes out. And at the moment, David, who is 77 years old, is sleeping in tents and caves to protect the families that he has known for more than 20 years. But he wrote a couple of books about that experience. And what he has always said, I mean, this is before things are very bad now, so, but I suppose he'd say the same thing, is you feel free in a way that you never felt in your life when you do this kind of work.